Good morning. Matthew Sanford was 13 years old when he was in the car with his father and his sister under icy weather conditions, and the car skidded off the road, and his father and sister died. And Matthew was in the hospital with many broken bones, with organs that didn't function, and a shredded spinal cord. When Matthew came to, he could not remember the accident. Over time, his bones healed, his organs started to function, but the spinal cord did not repair itself. So Matthew was paralyzed from the chest down and ended up in a wheelchair. He was an athlete before the accident, and it was suggested to him that he would focus on building up his upper body and forget about his lower body, and he could become an athlete in a wheelchair. And he did so for the next 12 years. When he was 25, as he says, he started to experience himself as a floating upper body. And then he met an Iyengar yoga teacher. And in Iyengar yoga, they teach that when we put our bodies in alignment in certain yoga positions, the energy can flow freely. And that if there are areas where it doesn't flow freely, to breathe into it so we bring spaciousness to it. And as we bring spaciousness to it, the energy starts to flow. So what the yoga teacher did is put Matthew Sanford's body in yoga positions with the help of props. And then Matthew, with great intention, started to breathe into his lower body. And amazing things started to happen. What Matthew said, healing started to take place, not healing of the physical body, because Matthew is still in a wheelchair, but he started to reconnect with his lower body. And what he discovered, that even though he did not remember the accident, his body did. His 13-year-old body had taken the full impact of the accident. And now that he started to reconnect with his lower body and started to, integrate body, mind, and spirit, now emotions started to be released. Now, that was not necessarily an easy process. It wasn't like, he turned the light switch on and now he was in bliss. It was quite an ordeal to process all these emotions, but he did. And he started to experience his own wholeness. And he became an Iyengar yoga teacher himself and started supporting people with disabilities, doing the same thing that was given him. So people with disabilities started to experience the wholeness in their bodies. So there are, through his journey of coming back to wholeness, because wholeness is always there, right? Our journey is just going back to realizing it. So in his journey, he discovered some principles, I want to say, some understandings, right? So the first one is that the body is a source of wisdom. You have to realize it's like, the divine is expressing as everything that there is. So it's also expressing as our body, and the divine is divine intelligence. So our bodies have that divine intelligence. There is great wisdom in the body. A 19th century clergyman said, who was also an anti-slavery activist, he said about the body, God made the human body. And it is the most exquisite and wonderful organization which has come to us from the divine hand. I want you to take a breath and then listen again. If you're comfortable, close your eyes. God made your body. It is the most exquisite and wonderful organization which has come to you from the divine hands. Take another deep breath. And you can open your eyes. Right? So one understanding is the body is a source of wisdom. The other one is that it's really important that we integrate our head, our intellect, our heart, where our emotions live, and our hara, our body. Because when we don't integrate that, we don't experience wholeness. All these parts are important. In the West, for a number of centuries now, we tend to focus on the intellect. We highly appreciate the intellect, but often the body is ignored. You know, it's like, especially in certain parts, I want to say, of the Western world, it's like working out and having a strong body and a good-looking body is important, but it doesn't mean that we're connected with it. You know, that still can be, it's like mind over matter, you know, and it's like, I just need to make sure that this body is in shape. And if it doesn't cooperate with me, then I'm actually angry at my body instead of noticing, it's like, oh, this is my body temple. It is an expression of the divine. This is sacred ground. And mind, heart, and body work together. And when I integrate that, then I get the full information, right? So the body is a source of wisdom. Integration is important. And then the third one was, it's like he needed, Matthew in his healing process, he needed to surrender control. His healing process was not about, yes, he used intention, but he used intention to stay focused, to notice what was going on in his body. But it wasn't about, oh, I'm going to make my body do this. He actually had to open up and surrender to the wisdom that was already there, to what wanted to move, to the emotions that had to be released for him to experience wholeness. So there was a lot of surrender involved. And with that came deep listening, just being willing to listen, to let go. He had to let go of any preconceived ideas. He just had to listen to what his body was saying. And when he can come to that place of deep listening, it's really amazing because, you know, it's like we get information that we might not have thought about. Or it might be that we just shift our attitude slightly, or we do a slight, you know, our behavior changes slightly, and it makes a huge difference. Right? So deep listening was really important. So the topic for July here at the Home of Truth is guided by spirit with resolve. So resolve means firm determination to do something, you know, or to achieve something. That is what resolve is. So I'm focusing on the embodied resolve. So embodied means it's felt and expressed through the whole self. There is a deep physical and emotional commitment to a decision, goal, or course of action. You know, when we have an embodied resolve, when we have an embodied determination, we are connected to the body and we recognize its wisdom. You know, it becomes part of it. The body becomes a participant in the sacred unfolding of what we want to do. We practice trust in the body. It's really interesting, right? Kathy knows I'm very enamored with Wendy Palmer, who was an Aikido master and taught conscious embodiment. And one of the things she says that is so beautiful, she says it's like the intellect, the mind, to feel safe, we need an anchor. And an anchor can be, for example, being at the home of truth. You know, we know this environment, we feel safe. When we step into the unknown, the body starts to freak out. because the body doesn't know where its anchor is. But what we can do, because for us to grow, for us to expand, we step into the unknown. So what we can do is practice being in the unknown and soothe the body. So we expand our ability to be in the unknown. And that's how we practice trust in the body. So our body becomes an ally for us. We work together with it. It's not really different from us, but I think that's often how we experience it. And then we need to practice to listen deeply. And this is a lifelong practice. It's not like, oh, I'm deciding this and tomorrow I have it all together. It's this constant practice to listen to the body. So if the body's intelligence is so important, because it is, then how did we get so disconnected? Because we're all disconnected on some level. Even when we feel like we're quite in touch with our body. Eve Ensler, who wrote and performed the Vagina Monologues, she shares in an interview with Krista Tippett, she says, she felt like she was really connected to her body. She had done the Vagina Monologues for quite some time already. And then she got cervical cancer. And through her healing process, she realized that she was still disconnected from parts of her body and that she had to dive even deeper. And we all get our own realizations when we go like, oh yeah, I'm not quite where I thought I was, or I can go deeper and I didn't realize that there was still another level. So, but why do we get disconnected from our bodies? Now, the first thing is trauma. Matthew Sanford's story, illustrates that. But what is trauma? So Bessel van der Kolk, who's a Dutch-American psychiatrist, a researcher and educator, and he wrote a book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's a great book. And he says, trauma, it's the effect of overwhelming experiences on people in society. Not just on individuals, but also on society. And I think that is really important to understand. So it's an overwhelming experience on people and society. Now, what an overwhelming experience is for me might not be the same what it is for you. But the point is, it's overwhelming. We can't digest it and we suppress it. Now, sometimes that is helpful, because something happens and we need to be able to function. But what is really important is that at some point, we take time and space to process what happened. And often that doesn't occur. In trauma, that means that overwhelming experience is actually never processed. I had a very clear experience of that when I was 18 years old. My father had already passed away and my elder sister had already passed away. So I knew I had the experience of grief and, the results of a family member dying. I had that experience and I had it in my body. And I was engaged at an early age, and my fiance's parents were in an accident when I was 18, and his mother died. And when I heard the news, I literally could see the effect of that news on the family and how things would unfold in the coming months, because I had that experience. But it was so overwhelming that I literally felt the curtain coming down. I could feel my psyche and my body shutting down because it was too much. Again, that was helpful at the time. What wasn't helpful is that I never dealt with it till much later, right? And then it starts to affect us. So trauma. The other reason that we're disconnected from our bodies is really medicine. Centuries ago, medicine was approached in a holistic way. We were seen as holistic beings. But in the 17th century, it became mind over matter. mind over body. And they started to separate the mind and the body and saying, like, the body just became a tool, a machine. And we just had to deal with the mind, which then expanded in the 19th century when there was specialization in medicine. And so now it was like, oh, if you have something going on with your liver, we treat your liver, not really connecting that there might be something else going on that then affects your liver and your liver responds to it. Right. And then in the 20th century, there was the biomedical model, and it was like, oh, there are bacteria that are attacking us, and we need to protect ourselves against those, or viruses, or whatever it is. Right. So we weren't seen as an integrated whole anymore. Now, that started to change at the end of the 20th century, and now in the 21st century, we see more and more of it. But, all the centuries before still have its effect. And again, I think especially in the Western world, mind and body is still often separated. And then the other influence is religion. Especially in the Middle Ages, the body was seen as something evil. It was bad to experience pleasure in the body. So focusing on spirit was the high road, and the body should be ignored or even punished. And also that, has played a role in the centuries after. I think also that's starting to change, but we're just at the beginning of it. So we got disconnected through trauma, history of medicine, history of religion. So how do we come back? How do we start to connect with the body? Now, there are wonderful practices, available these days. And I really want to highlight Kathy Dana's class, who teaches embodied consciousness right here at the Home of Truth. And she practices the work of Wendy Palmer, has worked with Wendy Palmer for many years. And my experience of her work has been really amazing. One practice that I started doing is what I call locating my body. So it's really starting to see where my energy is. And so I would just ask myself, where's my front body? Where's my back body? What's happening on my left body? What's happening on my right body? Where are my feet? Where's the top of my head? And it was amazing what I started to experience. I go like, oh, I know where I am in space and time. This is really amazing. And I had read before that it's better to be in the body than to not be in the body to respond to situations we encounter in our lives. And I thought, like, why is that? Because when there's trauma in the body, I can imagine it's a hard place to be. But when I started to notice where I was in space and time, I realized that when something happened in the world, at least I knew where I was. And then I could respond. Well, before, I might be floating out here for a little bit, and not really being able to respond because I wasn't centered in my own energy. And that is just one example. I mean, when I started to work with Wendy Palmer's work and started taking Kathy's classes, it's, many changes have taken place. So that is one thing you can do. What is also really well known now in the Western world is the mindfulness-based stress reduction that was brought. It's like John Kabat-Zinn, who is a professor emeritus in medicine. He went to the East and started meditating and saw the effect on the body and his presence and how he could be in the world. And he just translated it to Western terminology so people could relate to it. And he has been really successful because even Kaiser Permanente gives a free course on mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is really great. But it uses guided meditation, it uses the body scan, it uses mindful, movements and group discussion. Walking meditation, as has been promoted by Thich Nhat Hanh, is really amazing. And that is really seeing our body as sacred and the earth as sacred. So when we walk, we become very aware. It's like, as he says, it's like we're kissing the earth with our feet, which brings great awareness. Sound healing. We have had sound healing here, using vibration of sound in different ways. It can be through crystal balls, but it also can be through chanting. Chanting is very powerful. It resonates with the body and the body starts to align again. Food is really important. What we eat and what we take into our body and with which consciousness we do it. It's important how we grow food. It has been scientifically proven that when we grow vegetables and we give it love and attention, the nutrient density is actually higher than when we don't. It's really great, and I think we can see it. I've grown strawberries on my patio and they taste so good. Homegrown tomatoes, have so much flavor, because there's the love and the attention that we give it. It is proven that animals that are raised with integrity provide better meat than animals that are not raised with integrity. So the practice is all about going back to wholeness and seeing that we are all connected, which are our teachings, right? So those are some ways that we can come into our body, that we can start to experience a greater connection to our body. So when we have great resolve, when we follow spirit guidance, we get an impulse, either through the body or the intellect. What we need to do is see that our head, our heart, and our bodies are in alignment. And one of the practices we can do is literally ask our head, start asking questions in journal, and ask our head, like, how are we feeling about this situation? Or what is going on about this guidance? And then ask the same question of the heart, and then ask the same question of the body. And then see what our answers are. And if that's not in alignment, what is our next step to come into alignment? Right? We can use grounding exercises when we have a resolve, but we feel like it becomes too heady. We can just ground ourselves, just even sitting down and breathing, using our breath to connect with our bodies, and then seeing roots like that we're deeply rooted into the earth. So we come into our bodies. We can watch our posture, and it makes a big difference. If my shoulders are bent over forward, or if I just stretch up, ease up. We can use movement as prayer. We can ask our bodies, imagining it is the divine or knowing that it is divine, expressing, how do you want me to move? It's a great way to practice listening. And then, of course, somatic listening. What does my body feel like when I do blah, blah, blah? Is it light or is it heavy? Does it feel like I'm expanding or does it feel like I'm closing down? So there are many techniques. There are many techniques to connect with our bodies. There are many techniques to be in alignment with body, mind, and spirit. But the main thing is like when you have resolve, when you hear spirit's guidance, when you resolve to follow it, check with yourself if it is an embodied resolve. If it is not, it's going to be a lot harder to follow it. Then you start to manage it. If it is, then it just can occur for you. It can rise up. It will be reflected in every action you take, in the words you speak, in how you move. So stay in touch with your body and honor it.